Hello, welcome to Real Time Recorded. It's week 41. Zia, it's been a while. It's been, I think the last one was week 34 we did. But it was a big week. We've both been traveling a lot. I just saw you in London, but you were in Dubai for GITEX. Why don't you give us an update on that?
Yeah, I was at Dubai for GITEX, my annual stop at the Avaya stand there. The theme for Avaya this year's show was innovation without disruption. And what they were trying to show is how to bring a lot of their new technology in to their traditional customer base, which actually is a pretty good theme for the company given the size of their install base and given how much is still running their current technology. I think all in all, they had something like 10 or 11 press releases. I thought the most interesting one was the metaverse example they were showing, where they did this with a partner. And what they did basically was create a digital twin of Dubai government services. And, as you know from being there, the Dubai government's very forward looking when it comes to technology. So now if you want to set up shop as a business in Dubai, instead of having to run around to all the different departments, you can do it in their version of the metaverse, get all your licenses, immigration stuff done, and then be able to upload that into the real world. And so what Avaya does is they provide the contact center for people in the metaverse. And one of when I talked to Nadal about it, one of the things that he sort of almost was very matter of fact to it, is that it's just another digital channel to Avaya, right? So whether it's WhatsApp or whether it's messaging or email or whatever, metaverse is simply just another digital channel that they can drop into their contact center products. Staying on contact center, they announced CCaaS, OneCloud CCaaS, when we were there, I think in 2019, and there's been a lot of questions, about adoption and things like that. But they had, I think, 4 or 5 customers at the stand that are all using it. And so I think if you want to think of 2019 as the year they launched it, this year was the year it came to life. And so I think that was good for Avaya to show they have actual customers running on OneCloud CCaaS. And when I talked to the customers about it, and I said, why'd you use Avaya versus all the other ones? They all kind of gave me the same feedback. They have very complicated businesses. There's a lot of customization that needs to be done. There's a lot of understanding of workflow that Avaya has that if they were to move it to somebody else, they'd have to go through that process all over again. And frankly, the migration path from where Avaya is to CCaaS to OneCloud CCaaS is easier. So, I think there's, with Avaya right now, there's some question about how much of their install base they'll keep or whatever. But I do think that, the thing we've been consistent with is that their customers they have very complicated businesses. And that's a hard thing to be able to replicate.
Yeah.
And, my third takeaway, I guess, was just it was good to see all the partners there. So they signed a global agreement with Unifor, who do this conversational AI. Alcatel-Lucent Enterprise was there on the stand. They actually provided the network at the Avaya stand, which for the first year wasn't extreme. Verint was there, and then they had a bunch of specialty partners that filled the need. Honeywell was there with some work we're doing in Egypt and things. And so, one of the things that's always impressed me about Avaya International is just how many customers they can get to come to the GITEX stand, and that was the case this year.
Well, the GITEX show is always a big event, and we spent many years together there at the that Avaya booth, and it's just amazing. Just that booth is so amazing. It was was it another 2-story? I think that booth in previous years could hold something like 150 people or something like that. It was just a
Yeah, it wasn't 2 stories, but it was a bigger footprint, and they were talking about maybe making it bigger next year. So, and they arranged it a little bit differently. Instead of having just these kind of random pods, they had one that for automation and AI. They had another one for data and analytics. They had another one for customer experience. And so, based on your topic, that's the section.
Well, I was jealous of seeing some of your tweets coming out of the event. It's a show that I was looking forward to going to, but I couldn't make it this year. But sounded like a great event. Was there much concern that you picked up in the booth of people concerned about Avaya's situation right now?
No, not from the customer base, which is interesting. I think, but that's part of the way international is run under Nadal, where he does a good job of staying in front of his customers, explaining to them the situation. I think everyone obviously is taking a wait and see approach, but I do think the further on we get in time, the more confident customers get. Also, what's the worst case scenario, right? If something did happen to Avaya, it's not like the technology goes away and stuff. So, but I think customers are, waiting to see. But I do think that the team over there has done a good job of staying in front of the customer base and making sure that any concerns they have been answered.
It's funny you say about that worst case scenario, because that is the big advantage of a premises-based solution, is it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
It does sometimes go away
Yeah.
if you're in a cloud, and that has happened with a few
Yeah.
companies. But I wasn't there, but I wasn't far from you. As you know, I was over in Morocco at that NICE event. I have to say, NICE puts on impressive events, and it's not just because of the location and the venue and all that stuff, but they actually have really interesting content. And they put on an analyst event in Morocco. I really like the way that NICE presents stuff, because they're not, in fact, they barely even got into their portfolio. They're really talking about the state of the industry, the big shifts that are happening, the big shifts post-pandemic. They talked about how suddenly being profitable matters, having a viable business really matters, and they were taking several shots across across the bow of many of their competitors with that. And they talked about how the work style concepts are changing, from how do our offices and homes change, and I think that was a really interesting type of conversation. And they also pointed out that Barack in his keynote talked about that we're at a breaking point of complexity. And we've been talking about contact center. We've been covering contact center for years, about all the integrations that are happening, and now the conversational AI coming in, and all these different channels that are coming in, and it's really becoming very complicated. I love this concept they introduced of cognitive load. We talk about how many calls an agent can handle, how many chats an agent can handle, how many emails an agent can handle, but it's not that simple, because some chats are really simple and some chats are really very complicated. And so they're trying to figure out the cognitive load of an agent, and to figure out how many more conversations they can handle. I thought that was a really interesting concept. I would say that they're focusing much more on a broader contact center. They talked about how we know that consumers want to use digital channels, but a lot of contact centers are having trouble with that, and they're trying to figure out how to bridge that gap, and how to bridge these silos, and how to bring it all together. And their vision, which they spend a lot of time on, and I'm sure you've heard this before, they call it CXI. And I think CXI is really confusing, because people think it's a product, but CXI is definitely a vision. The product is CX1. And the vision of CXI is this, broader frictionless experience that goes well beyond what I think most CCaaS companies are talking about, well beyond the contact center. And it's fluent across digital channels and traditional channels. It's really trying to fix self-service. It's truly understanding intent of the customer and trying to take appropriate action, including, I thought this was a really interesting conversation around proactive actions, taking proactive actions with customers. And so I think the overall theme of what NICE was trying to communicate was the expanding beyond traditional CCaaS or beyond contact center. But it was a really good event. And then we both departed on the same day toward London, and we had UC Expo. We had a couple of sessions there together. That was nice. I was surprised how much UC Expo has grown. I think that show hall was almost twice as, the exhibit hall must have been twice as large as the one I think you were there and more recent than I was, but I think I was last there in 2019, and it was a much bigger hall.
Yeah, no, it was nice to see. And what was interesting too is in the Ask the Analyst session, we had all these different topics they could ask about, but all anybody wants to ask about is hybrid work and office redesign, right? Like, you can tell it's on the horizon, but no one knows what to do.
But it turned out to be actually a big contact center week, because between you and in Jitex and Avaya and me and NICE, there were some other big stories this week in contact center. One of the big ones came out of Five9. I don't know about you, Zeus, but it surprised me. Well, let me rephrase that. It didn't surprise me completely, but Rowan is leaving Five9. And I think I said to Rowan about a month or two ago, I was like, how much longer are you going to be here? So I can't say it completely surprised me, but it was fairly sudden, and Rowan has decided to leave Five9. We don't know where he's going. Mike, help me with the last names. Mike.
Berkland.
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 What was it? Yeah, Mike Brooklyn, thank you. Mike is coming back as the CEO. He was the CEO before, and he left due to some health issues, which have now been addressed, and so he's coming back. So a lot of questions and interest in this one. What were your thoughts on this one?
Well, first, the way Rowan did it, like, I guess a press release went out at the same time as tweet did. I thought that was kind of an interesting way to say you were leaving. But, it's very Rowan. And I think everyone has been expecting Rowan to leave now for a while, right? He's done a good job of transforming the company. They're setting their path. And I think Rowan likes to build more than he likes to run, right? So it makes some sense. I thought it was a little interesting that the old CEO came back, though, because I don't know, it just made Rowan's tenure there seem like a temporary hire until Mike got better, which wasn't the case, obviously. I think at the time when Mike left, I'm not sure he even knew if he was going to get better or not. So
Yeah.
that was good to see. But it does raise some interesting questions. I do think that when they agreed to sell the company to Zoom, or at least merge with Zoom, I think part of that was to give a lot of the leaders there, an exit. And because, Barry, Dan, and Mike have been running the company a long time. And so I think now they got to decide whether they want to keep doing it or they do want to look for an acquirer. So
yeah, when Rowan promoted Dan, and Rowan's promoted a lot of people at Five9, but when he promoted Dan to president a few months ago, I thought, oh, this is writing on the wall. He's getting ready to leave. But I thought, I thought about what Rowan had done. He's been there, since 2018. He completely rebuilt the Five9 platform. It was kind of considered a legacy cloud platform, put those two words together. He won some major enterprise customers, which was some pretty big wins. They hired over 2,000 employees during his tenure. He increased revenue 4 times and once again just beat expectations. Your comment about the timing, I think Rowan just wanted to start the clock. I mean, he's got an offer. He wants to take December off. He wants to start the new job in January. He had to get this out right away. So I think he had to get it out right away to start the clock so that he could do his transition and get out of there. And we don't know where he's going. I actually pushed him a little bit because I thought he'd be going to an Ethereum startup, and he told me it's not an Ethereum startup, but I don't know much more than that. But it sounds lucrative.
Yeah, I think at one time a year ago we would have all bet that it would have been something crypto related, but I'm not sure now.
So another announcement in Contact Center this week was from Genesys, killing off their multi-cloud solution. Specifically,
well, I understand that's John Hernandez and everybody down, right? That whole group.
I have to say, killing this group off a year ago wouldn't have surprised me. Killing off this group a year from now wouldn't surprise me. But it kind of seems strange right now because it seems like a logical thing to be targeting the Avaya base with. But they're killing off Genesys Multi-Cloud CX on AWS and Azure, and the Genesys Multi-Cloud CX Private Edition.
Yeah, I thought it was GCP in Azure, and I think the AWS piece remains. I think that's the only piece that remains, isn't it?
No, the only piece that remains, to my understanding, is the Genesys Engage premises-based solution is not being affected. But Genesys Multi-Cloud CX on AWS, Azure, and I actually don't know about Google, but I don't know. But it said that the Genesys Engage premises-based solution is not affected. But it's weird that they said that it's not affected, because if you read Tony's blog, Tony Bates put a blog up, and he says 100% of the company is now going to be focused on the cloud solution. And then the other post where they announced that multi-cloud solution is going away, they said it does not impact Engage used by thousands of companies. So if you're one of these thousands of companies that are on kind of a legacy platform, the CEO is saying 100% of the company is going to be betting on Genesys Cloud. So it sounds like the writing is on the wall there for Genesys Engage as well.
Yeah, and I do wonder from a Genesys perspective, that to me it would seem like this makes a transition from the prem base to the cloud harder. I think, what multi-cloud, at least from what I understand, is it made that migration a little bit easier because you could run in a hybrid mode a little bit easier. But I do think that the picture they painted when they rolled this group out of the world being multi-cloud, I think is indeed true, right? I think that vision is actually true. So pulling back from that now did seem a little strange, but I had heard that company had been burning through a ton of money, and they needed to rein in some costs somewhere.
Well,
And
it
so
must
this
have
was,
been because they built up this group around multi-cloud, and then they announced that at this point in time, and this is the decision to kill the solution, is only impacting 2% of their customer base, so it hasn't made much headway. So,
yeah,
uh, I'm kind of confused on this thing, to be honest. I mean, on one hand, it's a big deal that they're killing this off. On the other hand, if it's only 2%, it's not a big deal. And so,
the bigger question is why was it only 2%, right? That's the bigger question. So
yeah, I think it's a pretty good news probably for Cisco, because I think the Avaya base is kind of in play. You've got Gartner telling Avaya customers to reduce their spend with Avaya during this period of uncertainty. I would have thought the multi-cloud solution would be this natural transition point, but now that's going away. So if you're a large enterprise customer and you want a premises-based solution that you can control and put it in a cloud like AWS or Azure, you're probably limited to Cisco.
yes, that's probably true. Yeah, and you're right. That probably is good news for them, and that it kind of lets them corner the market.
So speaking of Cisco, there was another big announcement this week. Big week for and it seems to have caused a lot of
Let's
confusion. But basically, Cisco and Microsoft have announced that the Cisco video endpoints will now qualify for Microsoft MTR solutions, Microsoft Teams Rooms video solutions endpoints. And it's generated a lot of confusion and a lot of questions. You've been getting questions on this, Steve?
Yeah, well, and a lot of questions like has Cisco given up, the WebEx platform, and is this bad for Zoom? Is it good for Zoom? What does this mean for Poly, Logi? And there are a lot, and some people were frankly surprised. I'm not. I mean, Cisco's been working towards making their devices multi-vendor now for quite some time. In fact, ever since Sonora came back, right? That's been a big mission for them. So, given the size of the Microsoft base, and I think there's been kind of an admission inside Cisco over the last couple of years that you're not going to decouple teams from businesses. So the best thing you can do is improve the team's experience and win part of the pie instead of trying to win the whole pie. And that's what they're using these devices for. And I talked to Microsoft actually at UC Expo, and the people there felt that Cisco made flat out the best endpoints out there. So they were kind of happy to have Cisco devices, especially in that large enterprise base. There's a lot of Cisco devices in there, and there's a lot of Teams users. So being able to bring the two together actually is a nice win-win for the customer.
Yeah, it was really an interesting announcement that was both consistent and surprising. To your point, Cisco has been on an interoperability binge. You go back to 2018, Cisco room systems were incompatible with anything but Cisco, or only worked with Cisco solutions. But like you said, they've added Teams, they've added Google Meet, they've added Amazon Chime. I think there's a Zoom interop as well. And so Cisco's been steadily adding partners that their equipment works with, so that's not a surprise, and that now they've added Microsoft. On Microsoft's side, they've been adding device partners. I mean, I remember when it was just Poly was their only partner, but they've added Logi, Yealink, Crestron, Neat, just this week, D10, they've added Lenovo. So they've been adding a lot of partners. So this is kind of consistent with both. But what's surprising is the level of integration that Cisco and Microsoft announced. This is the first solution that Microsoft is not requiring a reboot, because you could use like a Neat system with both Microsoft or Microsoft or Zoom, but it required a reboot and different software. And so Microsoft's allowing this to work without a reboot, and Microsoft's also allowing the entire WebEx suite to be accessible without this reboot. And so that's pretty significant. And so that's why I get confused. You mentioned people are asking, and I've been getting the same question. Does this mean Cisco's giving up on WebEx? I don't see that at all. I think that WebEx sees an opportunity to sell more services to that Microsoft base. Microsoft sees an opportunity to have higher end endpoints. And keep in mind that the WebEx stuff, the devices, this includes the room systems, and it also includes things like headsets, but they're all centrally managed from WebEx. And so where if you have Logi or Poly or different brands, you all have to go to a third party to manage these things. So I think it's a pretty good upgrade for Microsoft. I think it's a pretty good upgrade for Cisco. And I think to your point that you raised earlier initially, I think it does put a lot more pressure on Zoom. Most enterprises already have some sort of agreement with Microsoft and Cisco. So Zoom really needs to justify its existence in these accounts, but that hasn't stopped them before. But
Yeah. No, I don't think it's a big impact to Zoom. I think the other device manufacturers should be, Poly, and we'll see what they do in Logi. Although it's a different class of devices in some cases. But I do think this is, from an industry perspective, I think a lot of, as analysts have been calling for better interoperability for years. When you look at any industry, interoperability always leads to usage, which is always good for everybody involved, right? So, Microsoft, I do think Cisco's been wanting to do this for a while, and I think Microsoft's been the one that's been blocking it. So I think Microsoft's finally got their, got their head in the right place and is actually embracing interoperability now, because you can't be an enemy to everybody.
Well, at this point, Microsoft's really figured out a co-determination strategy, because they've got almost every carrier basically saying we can make Microsoft Teams better. They've got almost every UCaaS company saying we can make Microsoft Teams better, and basically endorsing Microsoft. Now they've got every device maker basically saying we can make Microsoft Teams better. So Microsoft's becoming, the default solution, largely because everybody is endorsing it, and it's a fairly interesting strategy that seems to be working for them.
It's an interesting long-term thought, though, Dave. Because right now everybody is filling the gaps in Teams, right? Their calling's not very good, so you use Ring Central. The devices aren't very good, right? So you use Cisco. What happens when Microsoft does figure that stuff out, though? And so that they've been dabbling in calling and stuff for a while, so who knows how long that is? But it is an interesting thing to think about. That if they ever got that stuff right, what kind of impact would that have to the industry?
Well, I think this wraps up week 41, a busy week, and
On that gloomy.
and sorry it's been so long that we haven't been able to do updates since then. As many of you know, I've moved. I'm still in boxes. I'm still trying to figure out that. And travel, of course, is really picking up. And I know you've got a lot of travel ahead of you too as well. So, but hopefully, real-time record will be a little more frequent than every 9 weeks or so. But
Yeah.
all right, thanks.
All right, Sam.